The cold, starry void of space stretched endlessly before the crew of the Odyssey, a human warship. The ship moved through uncharted space, a dark expanse that was far from home, with no idea what they might find in the vastness of the universe. Their mission was simple: explore, gather resources, and seek out peaceful contact with any alien species they might encounter. As the stars twinkled around them, everything seemed calm, serene even. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound inside the command room, where Captain Aria Bennett stood, studying the star maps. But the calmness of space was about to shatter in an instant. Suddenly, a blip appeared on the radar, a faint signal at first, but quickly growing stronger. Aria frowned, her fingers tapping the control panel. She activated the comms to reach out to the crew. "All hands, prepare for potential contact. We've got something approaching." Her voice was calm, though inside she was already bracing herself. The unknown could be exciting, but it was also dangerous. The crew worked quickly, preparing for whatever lay ahead. Minutes passed as the strange signal grew stronger. And then it appeared, a massive ship, sleek and dark, moving fast and silently through the stars. Its design was unlike anything the Odyssey had ever seen. The surface was smooth, almost liquid-like, glowing with an eerie, pulsating light. It was the kind of ship that made the hairs on the back of Aria's neck stand up. It didn't seem to belong to any race that humanity had encountered. There was no question about it. This was an alien vessel. "Captain, it's coming in fast." Jace, the weapons officer, called out. "We need to brace for impact, or we might—" His voice was cut off by the sudden, deafening roar of energy, blasts slamming into the Odyssey's shields. The ship shook violently, and alarms screamed through the halls. Aria's hands were quick, steady as she worked to keep the ship stable. "Shields at 75%, Captain." Lieutenant Zara, the navigation officer, reported, her voice a mix of alarm and focus. The Odyssey's shields were holding, but barely. The ship was strong, but the alien vessel's firepower was something else entirely. A moment later, the ship fired again, and this time, the shields flickered as if they were about to collapse. "We're being attacked!" Aria shouted, her voice sharp. "Return fire, full power! Jace, fire the cannons now!" The crew sprang into action. Jace aimed the ship's weapons with practiced ease, and the Odyssey's cannons launched a barrage of energy blasts toward the alien ship. But to Aria's shock, the blasts seemed to have no effect. The alien vessel didn't even flinch. The Odyssey was outmatched, its weapons no match for the advanced technology of the alien ship. Another blast slammed into the Odyssey, sending sparks flying from the walls. The lights flickered as the hull groaned under the pressure of the alien fire. "Shields at 50%, Zara shouted, her voice tight with urgency. Aria gritted her teeth, feeling the weight of the situation settle in. This wasn't just an encounter. It was a battle for their survival. In the midst of the chaos, a voice suddenly echoed over the comms. It was deep, resonating with an otherworldly power that made Aria's skin crawl. "You are weak," the voice boomed. "Your weapons are nothing compared to ours. Surrender or be destroyed." The words were cold and without mercy, and for a moment, Aria felt a chill run through her. The alien didn't care about diplomacy or negotiation. It was simply giving an ultimatum: surrender or die. But there was no way Captain Aria Bennett was going to give in. Not without a fight. "I don't think you understand," Aria said, her voice calm despite the chaos surrounding her. "We don't surrender. We fight." There was a long pause, and then the alien's voice came again, this time tinged with an unsettling laugh. "Pray all you want," it said as if mocking them. "Humans show no mercy when enraged." The words hit Aria like a punch to the gut. It was clear now. This wasn't just a random attack, it was a test. The alien had expected them to submit, to fold under the pressure. But the truth was, Aria and her crew were human, and humans didn't give up easily. When pushed, when enraged, they would fight with everything they had. As if on cue, the ship's systems shook once more as another volley of blasts tore into their shields. "Shields at 20%, Zara reported, her voice strained. The situation was growing desperate. But still, the crew didn't falter. Arya could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. There was no choice now but to fight, to show this alien race that humans wouldn't be intimidated. "Keep firing," Arya ordered. "We'll make them regret underestimating us." The Odyssey returned fire with all its might. Energy beams streaked across the void, aiming for the alien ship's core. But the alien vessel was too quick, dodging and weaving in ways that seemed almost impossible. The Odyssey's crew fought valiantly, refusing to back down, but the enemy was relentless, pressing forward with no sign of mercy. In the heart of the battle, Arya remained focused, her mind working on how they could survive this. The crew fought, with all they had, pushing themselves to the brink. But deep down, Arya knew something was wrong. The alien ship was too powerful. There had to be another way, something they hadn't considered yet. They couldn't win this battle through force, alone. They had to outsmart their enemy. The alien ship's next move was swift and devastating. A bright flash of light erupted from its core, and before anyone could react, the Odyssey's shields collapsed entirely. The ship groaned in protest as the blast tore through the hull. Sparks flew, and alarms blared louder than ever. The Odyssey was badly damaged, and yet, despite it all, Arya refused to accept defeat. "We're not done yet," Arya said, her voice low but fierce. She wasn't sure how much longer they could last, but there was one thing she knew. They would fight until the very end, no matter the cost. As the battle raged on, the crew of the Odyssey stood strong, holding on to the one thing that made them different from their alien attackers, their unyielding determination. They would not surrender, no matter what the alien said, no matter how powerful their opponent seemed. Humans didn't know the meaning of the word mercy when they were pushed to the limit. And that was something the alien ship would soon learn the hard way. The battle intensified as the alien ship's firepower continued to rain down on the Odyssey, and Captain Arya Bennett's mind raced to find a way out of the situation. The crew was doing everything they could to fight back, but the odds were stacked against them. The alien vessel was powerful beyond anything they had encountered, and their weapons barely made a dent. Every shot fired from the Odyssey was met with an evasive maneuver from the alien ship, making it nearly impossible to land a clean hit. The Odyssey's shields flickered dangerously, and the ship groaned as it absorbed another wave of enemy fire. Arya stood at the command console, her knuckles white as she gripped the edges, her focus unbroken. She couldn't let the crew see her fear. She had to stay calm, steady. "Damage report," she barked, her voice a sharp command that cut through the chaos of the room. "Shields at 30%, Captain." Lieutenant Zara's voice crackled over the intercom, her words filled with strain. "Hull damage is severe. We can't take many more hits like that." "Understood," Arya responded, a cold fire burning behind her eyes. She looked toward Jace, the weapons officer, who was working frantically to fire back. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his hands flying across the controls in an attempt to aim the Odyssey's cannons with precision. But despite their best efforts, the alien ship remained unscathed, its sleek design allowing it to move with incredible agility. Arya's mind worked quickly. There had to be a weak point somewhere on the alien ship, something they could exploit. She turned to Zara, who was trying to maneuver the ship into a more advantageous position. "Can you find any way to outmaneuver them?" Arya asked, her voice steady despite the pressure. "I'm doing everything I can, Captain," Zara replied, her fingers dancing over the control panel. "But they're faster than we are. We're struggling to keep up." The tension was thick in the room, each passing second making it clearer that they were on the verge of losing. The alien ship, with its superior technology, seemed unstoppable. As Arya glanced out the viewport, she saw the shimmering waves of energy emanating from the alien vessel, each blast a powerful reminder of their power. "Jace!" Arya shouted, snapping her attention back to the weapons officer. "Find their weak spot. We need to hit them where it hurts." Jace didn't look up from his screen, his face a mask of concentration. "I'm working on it, Captain," he muttered. His fingers moved rapidly, his eyes scanning the data as if looking for something, anything, that could give them a fighting chance. Arya could see the exhaustion in his face, the strain of battling against an enemy that was superior in every way. The ship shook again as another barrage hit the Odyssey's already damaged hull, and Jace's voice rang out. "Wait, there it is! There's a weak point, Captain. Their core's energy system is unstable. If we hit it directly, we can cause a chain reaction. It's our only shot." Arya's heart raced. They had no time to waste. "Get a lock on." "It," she commanded, her voice urgent. Jace's hands were a blur as he adjusted the targeting system, aiming the Odyssey's cannons at the alien ship's core. The energy readings on the screen were fluctuating wildly, a sign that they were getting close. The alien ship fired again, and the blast rocked the Odyssey, knocking several crew members off their feet. The ship was falling apart piece by piece, but still, the crew held on, not willing to give up. With a determined breath, Jace shouted, "Target locked! Firing now!" The Odyssey's cannons discharged a volley of energy blasts, each one streaking through the darkness of space. The tension in the air was palpable as everyone waited, hoping for the best. The first few blasts missed the target, but then one of the shots landed. A brilliant flash of light exploded on the alien ship's surface, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The alien ship shuddered violently, as if reacting to the attack. Then, with a deafening roar, it erupted in a burst of energy that sent shockwaves through space. The crew of the Odyssey watched in awe as the alien ship's core destabilized, its systems failing one by one. It was working. They had done it. The alien ship was crumbling before their eyes, but the victory was short-lived. Just as Arya allowed herself a moment of relief, the alien vessel released a final, desperate pulse of energy, a shockwave that rocked the Odyssey to its core. The blast was so powerful that it sent the warship tumbling through space, its controls malfunctioning. Lights flickered and alarms blared as the ship struggled to regain its balance. "Captain, we've lost control!" Zara shouted, her voice filled with panic. The navigation systems were offline, and the ship was spinning uncontrollably in the dark void of space. Arya gritted her teeth. They were not out of danger yet. "Steady, everyone," she barked. "We can still do this. Get the engines back online, Zara. Jace, find a way to target them again. We can't let them escape." Jace's fingers moved rapidly, trying to recalibrate the ship's weapon systems. But it was clear that the damage to the Odyssey was significant. Every system was failing, and it was a race against time. As the crew struggled to get the ship back under control, the alien ship, though crippled, wasn't finished yet. It lurched forward, its energy weapons flickering as it sought revenge for the damage done. Arya's mind raced. The alien ship was still alive, still capable of dealing a fatal blow. She glanced at her crew, knowing they were all fighting with everything they had. The Odyssey was their home, and they weren't about to let it fall into enemy hands. But the alien wasn't done yet. It had a weapon that could destroy them all. Arya knew that they had to strike again, and they had to strike hard. The Odyssey might have been damaged, but they still had the will to survive. With a final surge of determination, Arya turned to Jace. "One more shot. Give it everything you've got." Jace nodded, his eyes burning with resolve. The Odyssey's cannons fired again, a final desperate attempt to take down the alien ship before it could retaliate. The space between the two ships seemed to stretch on forever, but the seconds felt like hours. As the blast tore through the void, it struck true, hitting the alien ship's remaining core with all the force they could muster. The alien ship, already on the brink of destruction, finally couldn't withstand the impact. It detonated in a blinding flash of light, sending debris scattering through space. The Odyssey rocked with the shockwave, but this time, it wasn't the end. The crew had done it. They had survived. The silence that followed was deafening. The Odyssey was battered and broken, but its crew stood victorious. They had faced an enemy unlike any other and fought back with every ounce of strength they had. The battle had been fierce and the price had been high, but the Odyssey had proven, one thing above all, humans, when enraged, showed no mercy. The silence that followed the explosion felt endless. Captain Aria Bennett stood frozen, her gaze fixed on the empty void of space where the alien ship had been moments before. The Odyssey groaned beneath her feet, the ship's hull still rattling, from the shockwave of the blast. The crew had done it. They had won, but the cost was apparent. The bridge, once filled with the sound of commands and movement, was eerily quiet, save for the low hum of the ship's failing systems. Aria's breath was shallow, her pulse still racing from the intensity of the battle. She looked around the bridge, seeing the faces of her crew. Some of them were bruised, exhausted, others staring at their monitors in disbelief, as though they couldn't fully comprehend what had just happened. The crew had faced an enemy that should have been unbeatable, and yet they had done the impossible. They had fought and survived. It felt like a miracle, but there was no time for celebration. The Odyssey was far from intact. "Report," Aria said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion that weighed down on her shoulders. Zara, the ship's navigator, looked up, her hands still trembling from the strain of the battle. "Shields are down to 10%, Captain. Hull integrity is critical. The engines are barely functional." Her voice was tight, and Aria could hear the fear behind her words. They had pushed the Odyssey to its limits, and now the ship was on the brink of falling apart. "Life support?" Aria asked, her mind already moving on to the next problem. "Stable," Zara replied, though her tone lacked the usual confidence. "But we've sustained some damage in the lower decks. I'm afraid we won't last long without repairs." Aria nodded grimly, taking in the information. The battle had taken its toll, and while the enemy ship had been destroyed, the Odyssey was far from being out of danger. They were stranded in the void of space, far from any friendly forces, and without immediate repairs, the ship would be nothing more than a drifting hulk. "Get to the engine room, Zara. We need those engines running if we're going to get out of here," Aria ordered, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Aye, Captain," Zara responded, quickly standing up and moving to the door. But as she reached the threshold, she paused, glancing back at Aria with a mixture of concern and disbelief in her eyes. "Captain, how did we do it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "That ship, it was too powerful. We weren't supposed to survive." Aria met Zara's gaze, her expression hardening. "We didn't just survive. We fought back, and when we fight like humans." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. "Don't forget that. Now go. We don't have time to waste." Zara nodded, her face set with determination, and left the bridge. Aria took a deep breath and turned to Jace, who had been working tirelessly at his console, trying to stabilize the ship's systems. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot, but his fingers still moved swiftly across the controls, refusing to give up. "We need to restore communication," Aria said, her voice sharp. "Can you get a distress signal out?" Jace glanced at her, his expression strained but resolute. "I'm working on it, Captain. The comm system is severely damaged, but I should be able to get a message out soon." He paused, looking down at the console. "If we don't get help soon, we'll be stranded here for good." Arya's stomach tightened at the thought. She had no idea how long it would take for a rescue ship to reach them, and the idea of drifting in space, powerless, was terrifying. But there was little they could do right now except hold on and hope that help was on the way. With a quick nod, Arya turned away from Jace and walked to the viewport, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. The stars twinkled, distant and indifferent, as if nothing had happened. But the reality was far from peaceful. The battle they had just fought had been a reminder of how fragile life could be in the cold reaches of space. The Odyssey was their home, their last line of defense against the unknown, and right now, it was hanging by a thread. The crew had done everything they could to keep the ship intact, but they couldn't deny the reality of their situation. The alien ship, despite its destruction, had shown them just how vulnerable they were. Arya's mind churned with questions. Who were these aliens? What did they want with humanity? And why had they come for them in the first place? Just as Arya was lost in thought, Jace's voice cut through the silence. "Captain," he said, his tone tense. "I've managed to send out a distress signal. It'll take a while to reach the nearest fleet, but we've done what we can. Now we just have to wait." Arya turned back to him, her eyes narrowing. "Good. Now we focus on making sure we can survive until help arrives." The crew began working together to stabilize the ship, running diagnostics and trying to keep the Odyssey from falling apart. Each member of the crew was exhausted, but there was a fire in their eyes, a shared sense of purpose that kept them going. They had won, but the war wasn't over. Arya knew that this encounter was just the beginning. The alien ship they had destroyed might have been one of many, and the battle for humanity's survival was far from over. Hours passed as the crew worked tirelessly, the ship slowly beginning to stabilize. Arya moved from station to station, giving orders and ensuring that every aspect of the Odyssey was accounted for. She was tired, but there was no time for rest. Not yet. As the repairs progressed, Arya found herself thinking back to the battle. She couldn't shake the memory of the alien's words, the threat it had made before the final strike. "Pray all you want," it had said, its voice cold and menacing. "Humans show no mercy when enraged." Those words echoed in her mind, and she couldn't help but wonder if they had only scratched the surface of something much bigger. What if these aliens were only the beginning? What if humanity's survival depended on more than just brute force? She pushed the thought aside. There was no time for uncertainty. The crew had survived, and they would continue to fight for their future. The Odyssey would survive. Humanity would survive. The enemy may have underestimated them, but they would soon learn that humans, when enraged, could be the most dangerous force in the galaxy. As the hours wore on, the Odyssey limped through the void, its crew exhausted but resolute. They had faced the unimaginable and come out victorious. Now, they had only one thing left to do: survive long enough for their message to reach the fleet, and then, when help arrived, they would fight once more. The war was far from over, but the Odyssey and her crew had proven that humanity's will to survive could never be broken. The Odyssey drifted in the silent expanse of space, its system stabilized for the moment, but the threat of impending destruction never left the minds of its weary crew. With every passing minute, Captain Arya Bennett felt the weight of their isolation more deeply. It was one thing to win a battle, but the silence of space seemed to mock them. They were far from the nearest friendly fleet, and their chances of survival relied entirely on the faint hope that their distress signal would reach someone in time. The alien ship they had destroyed was just the beginning of something much larger, and the battle was far from over. Arya had done everything she could to hold the ship together, coordinating repairs and organizing the crew to ensure they had the best chance of survival. The once bustling bridge had now settled into a quiet, determined rhythm. The crew worked as one, moving with purpose, but it was clear to Arya that the morale was beginning to fray at the edges. There was a palpable fear that the worst had yet to come, and it gnawed at the minds of everyone on board. Even in the face of victory, the uncertainty of what lay ahead was a shadow they couldn't escape. "Captain?" came the voice of Zara, the navigator, breaking through Arya's thoughts. Zara's face was haggard, her eyes red from exhaustion. She stood at her post, her fingers resting lightly on the control panel as she waited for Arya's attention. "I've been scanning the sector. Again. No ships are responding to our distress signal. The nearest fleet is still days away, and I'm not sure how long we can stay in one piece before the Odyssey gives out completely." Arya didn't flinch at the grim news. She had already anticipated it. "Keep trying," she said, her voice firm. "We can't afford to give up hope yet. Keep running those scans. They're out there. Someone will come for us." Zara nodded silently, and Arya could see the resolve in her eyes. There was little else to say. They had no choice but to trust in the systems they had left and the strength of the crew. Every resource on the ship was stretched to its limit, but if they didn't find a way to communicate with the outside world, they would become just another forgotten wreck drifting through space. Days passed, and the crew worked, in shifts, each member taking on more than their fair share of responsibility. The battle had taken a physical and emotional toll on everyone. Captain Arya had never felt more alone, even though her crew was by her side. The Odyssey felt like a prison, a fragile shell drifting in a vast, uncaring galaxy. Each sound, each creak of the hull felt like a reminder of their mortality, of how close they were to the edge of oblivion. One morning, as Arya stood at the helm, lost in her thoughts, Jace, the communications officer, called out to her from across the room. "Captain, you need to see this." Arya's heart skipped a beat, and she moved quickly to his side. "What is it?" she asked, her voice low with tension. Jace was staring at the screen in disbelief. "There's a ship. No, it's more than one. A fleet, Captain. It's coming toward us. They're responding to our distress signal." Relief washed over Arya like a wave, but it was short-lived. She knew that nothing in space was ever certain. The moment they thought they were saved could quickly turn into a trap, and she had learned that lesson the hard way. But for now, there was hope. "Patch me through to them," she ordered, her voice steady. Jace quickly set up the connection, and the screen flickered before a face appeared. It was a familiar face, but one Arya had never expected to see again. It was Admiral Darius, the commander of the Terran fleet. His expression was unreadable, but there was a hint of recognition in his eyes. "Captain Bennett," Admiral Darius said, his voice a mix of relief and caution. "It's good to see you alive. We've been tracking your distress signal. What's your status?" "We're alive, sir," Arya replied, her voice tight. "But we're not out of danger yet. The Odyssey is damaged beyond repair, and we're in need of immediate assistance. I'll need the fleet's help to get us out of here." The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he looked at the damaged ship on the screen. "I can see that. We're en route, but it'll take us some time to reach your coordinates. How long can you hold?" "Out? We don't have much time," Arya admitted. "The Odyssey can't survive much longer in its current condition. We need to either be towed to safety or have repairs done immediately, or we're done for." "I understand," Admiral Darius said. "We'll be there as soon as we can. Hold on, Captain. We're coming for you." The connection was cut off, leaving Arya with the bittersweet knowledge that help was on the way, but they still had a long wait ahead of them. There was no guarantee that the fleet would arrive in time, and no telling what dangers they might encounter along the way. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and though the Odyssey had survived the worst of the battle, it had also made powerful enemies. Arya couldn't shake the feeling that the destruction of the alien ship had only been the beginning of something much larger. Despite the heavy burden that still rested on her shoulders, Arya couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. The fleet was coming. They would not be abandoned. The Odyssey and its crew had fought hard, and their determination had finally paid off. But the war wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more battles, and more enemies to face. And this time, they would not be caught off guard. Hours turned into days, and the Odyssey continued its slow drift through space, each moment feeling like an eternity. The crew fought to maintain their focus, to keep the ship in as good a shape as possible. Even as exhaustion began to take its toll, they pressed on, knowing that their survival depended on it. The tension was palpable, the silence heavy with the weight of their shared burden. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the first signs of the fleet appeared on the sensors. A group of ships, larger than any Arya had seen before, emerged. From the darkness of space, their sleek, imposing shapes cutting through the void toward them. The sight filled her with both relief and apprehension. The fleet was here, but what would happen when they arrived? Would they be met with open arms, or would their rescue come at a price? As the ships approached, Arya stood at the bridge's viewport, her eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. She knew the battle was over, but the war had only just begun. Aliens would be back, and when they returned, humanity would be ready.